Yeah, let me speak a little bit to that and then maybe make a shift to a more generic discussion. If you look at, for example, Germany as a case, it's an interesting case in that sense because we're part of the European Union, but we have now the enormous pressure because of the war actually getting rid of the gas dependency of Russia to really increase our and speed up our fast energy transition. And renewables from wind farms in Germany is one of the options. Now, Lisa, we don't have the luxury to take the global perspective, which we should, but they're looking at the EEZs, and Germany, the EEZ is really small. And the debate right now is where we had planned for 30 gigawatts, we want to now have to do 70, which is double what the planning is. And it is clear that this can only be done by doing wind farm zoning and generation and building in what we would call marine protected areas. In Europe, we call Natura 2000 places. So the obvious stakeholders, the NGOs, on the one hand, sort of represent conservation, and then the energy ministries want more renewable energy on land and in the sea. So the conflict is there. How does it get resolved? Well, typically you ask who's in charge. Jurisdiction is by a certain agency who has legal power. They do the consultations and then they come up with a plan, and that's how it's done. It is violating our commitment to conservation, but something has to give, right? And this is already a case where we're seeing there is no good compromise anymore. It's really the tough compromises. And what I'm arguing for, which I think you also, Ferdinando, argued for, is we need much more engaged and future-looking marine spatial planning frameworks. And these digital twins that are offered up is one of those, which takes a much more inclusive approach that really plays against the various uses in a dynamic environment and plays it out. Now, for the wind, it's also maybe changed by climate change, but not so much. But the ecosystem might change dramatically. So zones that you might think are safe for now might not be safe so much in 10 years from now when fish are migrating in species and so on. So I think it behooves us to really take that holistic approach with the modern tools that we have. But the fact of today is, in crowded countries like Europe and crowded EEZs, we are already in massive conflict as we are on land, and we're giving up protection for energy generation because we want to get out of CO2-based energy. So it's completely playing out in these countries. Mediterranean is another example where we just don't have the luxury of space. In the US, you have a bit more space to go around, in other parts of the world as well. So that's the one piece of it. But the other piece is the economic dimension. I mean, Fernando, I did want to come back to this economic problem that you pointed out, and I wondered whether a more inclusive wealth index framework would be a better solution place, right? That gets you out of the classical economic models. And if you take an inclusive wealth approach for the ocean, you set in value parts of the ocean that we usually don't set in value. And I think, to me, that is an interesting discussion that then gets back to a sort of inclusive wealth approach as a semi-economic concept, but it takes into consideration things that usually in the protection community say we must protect because for the good of the animals or the planet. And then the blue economy says, no, we want jobs and growth. And for some reason, these things don't come together. But in an inclusive wealth framework, you could bring them together because you could, in a more inclusive way, set also in value the nature as such, and, for example, protected areas and so on. Because we need to get out of that issue that was raised here, because we do have these conflicts, they will be resolved. Economic considerations will be not only them, but they'll be part of it. And good solutions we are looking for. We're more working sectorial silos here, but I think as a marine science community, we should offer up more integrated solutions or perspectives looking into the future. And I wonder what your thoughts were on the inclusive wealth.
If I can answer the question. Yes, but this is the time of discussion. In the digital twin, you should include biodiversity and ecosystem functioning. And we do not know biodiversity and ecosystem function. So no, we don't know the names of the species in front of our laboratory, okay? So the natural capital has not been quantified properly. So if we want to make a cost-benefit analysis, we need to know the costs, the environmental costs, very carefully. We are presented the benefits, but the costs are hidden. And for the economists, these are negative externalities. They are externalities because they put them out of the cost-benefit analysis. This is bribing. You cannot hide the cost and put on just the benefit. This is not a solution. It will bring more problems then. So we need to know very well what we are dealing with, not only from a chemical, geochemical, and physical point of view, but from ecosystems and biodiversity. And we do not have enough knowledge on this. All these beautiful observing systems measure variables that are not covered by the good environmental status descriptor. There is not a beautiful machine that tells us if biodiversity is maintained, which is descriptor number one. So we need to invest in this direction. It's okay to know physics, geology, and whatever, but now we have to invest more on this. The digital twin is not really a twin. It's a stepbrother.
Okay, thank you, Nando. Matt, please.
I was impressed by our representative of European Commission. If I add, and also taking upon what Martin and Ferdinando said, I just want to give the voice of younger generation and also teenagers. Just a life example. I was at the first communion, no? Our kids in Italy, rest of the world on Sunday had the Prima Comunione. And near on my side, they were like the sisters and brothers, teenagers. And I start talking about this meeting of today and about a film, produced by a courageous biological marine video maker that is called Seaconspiracy. I invite you to go on Netflix. It's shown all over the world. And how is the reality and there's a perception of under 30 years old around the world. This video maker, who is very courageous with his girlfriend and the sister, went through the world to try to get answers from political leaders in the United Nations, European Commission, and we're trying to, it's quite dramatic and funny, but I think it's worth to see it and to see what Martin and Ferdinando is saying. They just was going around the European Commission and countries in Japan, in China, and they almost were killed while they were filming what is reality. So I think that we are quite far from what at the political level we are doing and from what our kids are understanding of where is the solution and what we can do. And for example, just end this, and the question is also for our friends of European Commission on how it's perceived if they saw this movie that went all over the world, Seaconspiracy, that is engaging the European Commission, some past commissioner. On our behalf, we will have in the 5th to the 8th of October, a film festival, international film festival for the 150 years of the Stazione Zoologica, and we will invite Virginius Sikevicius, who is the European Commissioner for Fishery and Marine Business, and we already engaged the director of the European Commission in Italy, Antonio Parlati, and they're very interesting to see the point of view of kids through the magic art of cinema with smartphone of 1 minute. Thank you very much.
So I really appreciated the speech of this session. And first of all, because Nando was presenting the importance of natural capital, and one of these capitals is space. In addition to that, the three-dimensional space. And seas and ocean have a lot of space. This is one of the important issues behind also the energy transformation and the energetic transition towards the offshore wind farms that require a lot of space, even to give, a certain minimal distance in between the turbines. Okay? I really thank you, Thomas, for this talk, because it provides a unique opportunity to discuss more also about a big issue for the humanity, which is energy equity. We have an issue here which is related not just to the need of the most advanced countries to produce, renewable energies instead of fossil fuel-based energy. But also, the oceans could allow emerging countries, developing countries, or whatever, to have, say, eternal, long-term provision of sustainable and renewable energy, which is very, very important. The point is here, and you mentioned with the problem with the raw materials, the producer, whatever, are the big economies generous enough to share the technologies open to developing countries? Because there are countries, Germany, Italy, Iceland, whatever, consuming 2, 3, 4 times as much of the energy we need, and others that are not getting sufficient energy to run the needed services for the survival. So this is the first issue. That comes back to the second one, which is related to the point you touched, and is very important. And I think that the Pontifical Academy could, seriously, speak for all and trying to combine this issue. We are facing an era, a blue era, Rose, but a blue era of potential increasing conflicts for the use of the maritime space. And there are either international potential conflict towards the area behind national jurisdiction. But another one is an internal conflict in between the use of maritime space. For instance, the one dedicated to plan for the search for new fuels. Martin was mentioning, the new run for gas that requires maybe 7-10 years from now, if we look for new, platforms, the same time we need for renewable energies, more or less, Thomas, right? This is a point because we need to give a priority, but we have a well-established economy based on fuels versus a potential new economy, still not so strong to push and have a priority. So European Union is trying to give a priority, but at national level, I'm not sure that in the frame of the maritime spatial planning, we will be able to give a priority to renewable energies when we have a conflict of interest in between fossil exploitation and wind exploitation. And that goes to a third point, which is quite surprising to me, because the Coconut Project and others demonstrated that when you get an area for offshore wind farms, we are talking about 1,000 square kilometers, 2,000 square kilometers, huge areas, you can also use that areas to protect biodiversity, namely including deep sea biodiversity, because most offshore wind farms goes, beyond 200 meters now. But now we have a problem because IUCN and WWF, I'm looking to you, Jim, prepared a document against the use of this maritime space as other effective area-based conservation measure. So against the use of these areas to be included in the targets of the Agenda 2030. So it's a very complicated issue. So we are looking for increasing conflicts of use of the maritime space, potential of using not just renewable energies, but coupling renewable energies with the protection of the marine environment, yet some international environmental organizations are declaring that they do not agree, and we have another conflict of interest, as most of the biomass, partly showed by Lisa, is in the mesopelagic, is in the deep sea. We have a conflict of interest with the fishermen that are claiming for a decreasing in our fishery yields, and they want to be restored for the impact of reducing the area exploitable for trawling fisheries and grabbing the biomass of the oceans. Then, the point of Martin is that convenient, not just because it's good, but is that convenient from the point of view of employment. Martin made a very important point to me, because offshore wind farms are not just renewable energies, are a different approach to the maritime space. could be also an opportunity to convert the fishermen, the human capital into new professionals. They require ships, they require people, but they can also be connected with the three dimension, with currents, tides, floating solar, integrated aquaculture offshore, because the problem of aquaculture offshore is that you spend a lot of money to get there, but if you're already moving there because you have to maintain, the offshore. So here we have a huge set of things that require, of course, an environmental impact assessment that, as far as I know, the European Union left on, on the decision of the single countries. So we have Spain was complaining, some scientists even in Spain were complaining because of the lack of environmental impact assessment for offshore wind farms in Spain that now turn back into the evaluation. And in Italy, we are doing that, but we are slowing down because the environmental impact assessment requires some time, the process of, energetic transformation. So here we have, many, many issues that need to be put together. And your talk allowed us to get a point here. But the question is, are we able to use and promote the offshore wind farms for the energy equity and to conciliate the different, expectations for the use of the maritime space?
Okay, thank you, Roberto. And I think we've overrun our time a bit. If there is, oh, yes, of course. Your answer, go ahead. Sorry.
When listening, two aspects that you mentioned about reskilling, I totally agree with that. And also what I read and see is that there is a huge gap of knowledge or that could be transformed maybe from fisheries or even from the oil and gas exploration, who are capable in working in on navigational aspects or operation and maintenance of offshore wind farms. So I think a certain share of reskilling from other sectors is definitely possible and needed. And also when listening to the comments made on biodiversity, it's not my main topic, I have to admit, but we see also that in offshore wind farms that can be islands of new biodiversity. For example, on the monopiles, there are research projects that look into growing new type of species there. So we see that I think it's very compatible with other sectors and also with biodiversity targets. So I think in that sense, I support what you were saying and even, agree on that issues made. Many thanks.
I think there was another comment. Rashid also wanted to comment something. No, I did see your hand go up.
It's comment to Ferdinando. Thank you for your points, and your points are well taken. There are big issues, and we need to deal with. We don't have enough information. But my comment is about being practical in a way, right? So some of us, I'm one of those who try to put value on things we shouldn't value, and the reason I do that is about practicality, and I'll touch on this when I give my own talk. The thing is, most of the time, if you don't have any value on something, the market doesn't recognize it, the politicians don't recognize it. So some of us feel if you don't put some value, then it's assumed not to have value. And that's what is driving. It's a practical point. And we can debate this. This is a big debate forever. Yeah, price, yeah, okay. The price comes from value if you do your valuation properly. We can argue forever, I know. But the second point I have is also about science. We don't know enough, and that is true. But This is a struggle I have. Anytime I go to Africa, they say, we don't know anything. We can't do anything. And this kills me because that stops progress. So I tell them, look, I don't come here to ask whether you know something or not. What do you know? What do you know? Let's do something with what you know. That way you build and know more. So life is not like, I don't know, so I go to sleep. You've got to keep going. So that's where the concept of using the best available science comes into play. So I just thought I should make this comment just to make it more exciting. Yes, Jeff.
Science is not enough. We have to improve it. We have to improve it. And we have to invest on improvement. And we have the illusion that we know and we don't know. So once we will invest in these things, then you can tell what you are saying. Let's not wait to know. But if you do not invest in knowledge, you will never know. And if you don't know, then you say, well, we don't know, so let's do it anyway. No. The precautionary approach says no.
Oh, well.
The conversation during lunch, as agreed upon, because I think lunch is waiting for us and we cannot overrun. Okay? So thank you, everyone. It's been a very exciting session. Compliments to everyone.
Well, thank you, Adriana. Let me talk about lunch. I don't know if we have fish or... It's over there. We had a very healthy debate this morning. Thank you. We are not even at halftime of this workshop. We need to get these conflicting discussions on the floor. We need to push for a better understanding of the true cost of the damage. Let me avoid talking value and avoid talking price. But on the costing of, for instance, what we bring into the food system out of the oceans, I think we need to push to get that clear. It's vastly undercosted. So I'm pleased that when Elisa will call us to order after lunch, we will start right away with food from the oceans, but let's have food first. And thank you again.